So I think it's been a pretty recent topic that Garen is kind of down in the dumps when it comes to his performance in solo queue. I remember streaming yesterday and people were saying, RISTE, look at Garen's win rate. It's like 46, 47%. I'm like, where are these numbers coming from? I thought Garen was like S+ tier. And then it hit me for a second. I'm like, wait, this has to be an accumulation of what's been going on lately in League of Legends. Now, if you guys are under a rock, which some of you might, other people in Twitch chat might be Challenger, they might already know this before me, so you guys already know what I'm talking about. But there has been systemic changes. There's been systemic changes that have been affecting Garen for the last few patches, that even though Garen hasn't been nerfed, the various things that he chooses to take when it comes to runes and items have been nerfed, with some exceptions. Some stuff has been buffed, but for the majority, it's been nerfed. And what am I talking about here? I'm talking about things like Thorn Shield, Second Wind, Legend Tenacity, not in that order, but those are probably the top three. Garen's runes have been nerfed pretty consistently over the last few years, and it's getting worse for him. And when I look at his win rate today, in Diamond Plus, Masters Plus, he is plummeting really heavily. And that's really concerning because we're getting to a point where Garen is now only good in low elo, and he is really struggling in high low. He's a very subpar pick. I think last time I checked with U.GG, he is in D tier. Let's go ahead and take a look at U.GG stats really quickly, so that way you guys have a reference point here. Okay, so this is U.GG. Platinum Plus listed as D tier, 49% win rate. That doesn't look too bad. There's tons of champions that operate with a 49% win rate, do just fine. But let's go ahead and climb a little bit here. Diamond Plus, 47%. Almost near 48, but it's plummeting. Definitely plummeting. Diamond 2, 46%. Masters, 45. Well, just about 46%, but literally going under 46% by just a few decibels. This is really concerning. This is also a polled global win rate from U.GG. Sample size of 2,000 games, which is a bit small, so that's why I like using the D2. So we have a bigger sample size game here, 5,000 games and then 10,000 games respectively. But this is not coincidental, guys. This is all because the various resources that Garen has been used as a safe pick to survive tough matchups is getting hit one after the other. You know, Second Wind, Thorn Shield, and Legend Tenacity are the big ones too. And you might think, oh, well, the Thorn Shield nerf wasn't, you know, too significant. You're basically losing 24 HP per minute because it went from 6 HP per 5 to 4. But if you stack that on top of the Second Wind nerf, it's a lot more than that. So it's all these small incremental nerfs that are just hitting Garen over and over. It's really affecting his ability to thrive in high-low. I'm even feeling it myself. Like, I played a matchup versus Fiddlesticks yesterday. I played a Fiddlesticks matchup yesterday where I could not do anything. I was sitting under tower. He took Comet Ignite, and I was sitting with Magic Resistance, Stat Sharp, with Skilling HP, Second Wind, Thorn Shield, and I was fighting for my life. Like, legitimately. Like, mages have the option to take Comet Ignite now and just keep Garen at tower indefinitely, because the amount of HP he's losing per minute from these nerfs is really substantial, and it's really crazy to deal with right now. Garen's really struggling in high-low, but this opens up the question. Right? Can we actually let Garen be a viable high-low champion? It's tough because Garen's a beginner-based champion, so it doesn't really make sense to keep him perfectly balanced in high-low. But today's video is going to be talking about that because I have some ideas. And I really hope that with this discussion video that a designer catches wind of this and watches the video, because I don't want Garen to be balanced in the wrong direction. Now, based on trends from last cycles of buffs, I don't know if you guys remember this, but Garen, I think 2 years ago, got this random buff. Nobody was expecting it. It came out of left field. Like, he was doing really bad in high-low. And his win rate was decent in low elo. You know, you think when you look at numbers such as this, right? 50% win rate, S tier. 51% win rate, S tier. Let's look at Iron. 50% win rate, S tier. Gold, A tier, 50%. Seems like a balanced champion, right? What they did was they just randomly buffed his ultimate damage, which nobody was expecting. Like, I did not expect it. It was the most random thing ever. When you think of how powerful Garen's ultimate is, they just decided, yeah, let's just go ahead and buff it more. So that was really substantial. And we're kind of seeing a similar climate where Garen can just get randomly buffed again. And I'm not here to complain about it. I'm like, sure, okay, let's buff Garen. But the discussion that remains is, let's buff him in the right way. And I don't want to see Garen's passive, because right now, that's the Band-Aid solution, right? Okay, we nerf Second Wind, we nerf Doran's Shield. What's the solution? Let's buff Garen passive, right? If Garen's passive gets buffed, that compensates for the nerfs on Doran's Shield Second Wind, right? Compensation buffs. But I think at the same time, this isn't the right direction to balance the champion, because I think that in order for Garen to be buffed in a healthy way that doesn't create issues for him in low elo, he needs to be buffed in a way that rewards higher expressions of skill and higher MMRs. So when we look at Garen's kit in that type of vacuum, there's not much we can really work with, because Garen's not really a skill-expressive champion. He has some skill levers, for example, sequencing abilities and timing things, which is not the most complex stuff because almost every champion has that. So yeah, he doesn't have any skill shots, right? So what do we hit when we're trying to target a high-low Garen buff? And I came up with some ideas. This might be a no-brainer for some people, but notably, the best ability that we can look at when it comes to higher expressions of MMR is Garen's W. So I thought about this, and I said to myself, you know what? There's a way that we can have Garen survive these more brutal lanes while also rewarding high-low Garen mains, and it lies within Garen's W. Now, for those people who don't know Garen too well, for the first 0.75 seconds of Garen's W on activation, he gets a shield. And it's a very, very small window because most shields last from anywhere from 1 to 2 to sometimes even 3 seconds, if I recall correctly. And that's a very sizable window of timing to go ahead and mitigate damage. For Garen, it's a 0.75 second window, so that means if you really want to maximize the value of that shield, your timing has to be spot on. You cannot miss the timing of this ability because it's a very, very narrow window. What this means is that your timing has to be good. For example, a Garen with good reactions, which is going to be probably more commonly present in high-low, I would assume, because high-low players have better reactions in general, we could say generally. They get rewarded more with the usage of that ability. So what I would like to do, and I would like to go ahead and bring up a notepad here so we can talk about this. Bring up a notepad here. So specifically, I think we'll put Garen changes here. So W. I think they should increase the value of the shield. I think this is a very, very fair suggestion. And I think it's reasonable. You guys can feel free to disagree here. But I think that increasing the value of the shield or the shield ratio would be more valuable for Garen in terms of buffs than just buffing versus buffing his passive. Because if you buff Garen's passive, that affects every Garen main under the sun. Regardless of what MMR you play in, Garen players will be able to value using a stronger shield in higher MMRs because you're more likely to land that, right? I see so many times low elo Garen players do not time their shield properly, or they use it for the wrong ability, right? It is a very skillful thing to not only use it at the right time, but also know what circumstance to use Garen's W in, because that shield is very impactful. It's a high impact type of ability, especially when you time it critically good. This works versus tower dives. People are trying to execute you. It's a very skillful type of thing. It's probably Garen's highest skill lever out of any of his abilities, other than timing his Q, which is a separate discussion here. So I really, truly believe that to fix this type of sustain issue for Garen and reward high-low Garen players on top of low-low Garen players who are good with their reactions, they should focus on buffing Garen's W. Do not buff the passive. I feel like that's what Riot Games would do. And I'm trying to caution them not to do that because I don't want Garen to be in the same space as he was before, where there's no way to buff him in a meaningful way for high-low Garen mains or quality of life changes, because he hits the quote-unquote theoretical balance ceiling. And what I mean by that is that this champion, quote-unquote, is ineligible for buffs because his win rate is too high in a certain MMR. So that means if he gets any type of love, any type of buff, he essentially will be broken, and that means he has to get subsequently nerfed. That is the core issue there. My suggested changes, I feel like, would increase his win rate in low elo, but only super marginally. It would do wonders for him in higher MMRs because that is the real reward. There's going to be better value in those buffs for higher MMRs. Now, I'm probably speaking in a very selfish way here because I'm a high-elo Garen main, and maybe I'm not advocating for Garens in low-elo, but if we take a look at the data, guys, is Garen really struggling in gold? No, he isn't. Is Garen really struggling in silver? No, he isn't. Is Garen really struggling in bronze? I think you guys get the point here. Like, this discussion is not for low-elo Garen mains because if you guys are playing in low-elo, you guys can carry Garen just fine. He's a very viable pick. The amount of mistakes that you can punish by locking this champion in is highly abundant because Garen is a naturally good champion in punishing these mistakes in the first place. So as a result, I think that my suggested changes are more helpful towards people who want to invest in Garen in the long run. I'm talking about the Garen mains who want to go ahead and climb and keep this champion in their champion pool through their trials and tribulations as they leave bronze, as they leave silver, as they leave gold, heading into platinum where he starts really suffering issues, and then straight into diamond, it just plummets more and more. But I think, like, at the same time, there's also a flaw in my argument because people can say, hey, RISTE, well, Garen's designed to be a low-elo champion, so maybe he just doesn't need buffs at all. Maybe he's just designed and destined to be this champion who's just going to suck in high-lows. Because if we look at other balance trends, yes, Garen unfortunately falls into this category where other champions just suffer this fate, right? We have a champion who's getting nerfed who's only a problematic issue in bronze. Who is that champion? That's York. York is getting nerfed, and I'll show you guys. York is getting nerfed right now, not because of this win rate, 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 because the sample size is 88. He's getting nerfed because of this win rate. He has almost a 54.1% off of a 54% win rate, and that lands him into S tier in bronze MMR with a sample size of 93,000 games. Where in bronze silver, you have the most amount of League of Legends games played out of any MMR. York suffers this same curse because he struggles to be in high elo viable because he's balanced around low elo. He punishes low elo players too much because we have players who face tank his maiden and just end up dying. with the York player ending up not having to do anything but just send the maiden down lane. That's the issue with York. And Garen could very well suffer this fate. Yumi's being reworked as an introductory champion who might suffer this same fate and is prevented from being viable in high-low because of, well, having the same issues as York and maybe the same issues as Garen. So this leaves a greater discussion, which hopefully you guys in the comments can go ahead and help me out with. But is Garen bound to this fate where he's only going to be viable in low-elo, and then he's just going to have to infinitely suffer in high-elo? I really hope that isn't the case. I really would like to see continued changes that reward Garen players and other champions who decide to bring their introductory champion to higher MMRs. I know there's always going to be people who are going to say Garen should always just stay weak in high-elo because he's meant to be a beginner champion. But I'm held of that. I hold the opinion where that shouldn't be the case. I think keeping as many champions as possible viable in high-elo helps the game's diversity. It also helps competitive too, because if we apply that philosophy to too many champions who are more approachable by beginner players and subsequently are balanced with that philosophy, it hurts the champion pool for competitive play. You know, whether or not a champion is exciting to be seen on the pro player stage is, I guess, its own separate discussion, because I know that people got real tired of Udyr being on the pro player stage really quick. And maybe the same would be applied to Garen and Darius, for that matter. But I do think that diversity would be good. So lastly, I want to go ahead and wrap this up with the rest of my suggested changes to hopefully push Garen in the right direction here. And again, I'm trying to keep these suggested buffs very, very minimal because I don't feel like Garen deserves big buffs. I feel like he just deserves a little bit of help for high elo. So the W buff would be probably the biggest substantial one. I think that'd be pretty important. Also, I feel like I should mention Garen Jungle because Garen Jungle is just 1 or 2 changes from being really viable, like a tankier version of Shyvana. Just give him the gosh darned double W stacks on big monster camps. And in fact, since we're talking about Garen's W, give Garen double W stacks on getting a cannon. It's a very interactive type of element if the Garen player is risking himself in a tough matchup to get the cannon, because it's a timed event where the opponent can punish him for going for the cannon, but that risk and reward element is a very indulging and rewarding type of experience. And there's many stack-based champions who are modernized to get double W or double stacks for getting a cannon anyway. Give this to Garen. Like, let Garen be rewarded for risking his life to get the cannon, because in certain matchups, it's really tough. I feel like this is a micro buff that hits every single Garen player, but it would really help his W stacking too. So like if you get a cannon, you get 2 stacks instead of 1. Super minuscule buff. I feel like it's reasonable. My last suggestion here, because I thought about the tank Garen players, because I get asked about tank Garen every single day. And here I go. I got something for you guys. Here we go. My brain's sparking literally just talking about this. If Garen's champion size increases, and when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about items like mythics that increase champion size per mythic stack and Elixir of Fortitude. If Garen's champion size increases, his spin radius increases as a result. Right now, if you guys mega buff Garen's champion model, what ends up happening is that his sword, awkwardly in animation, goes past his spin. So you have the tip of the sword just doing nothing, and then Garen's spin radius does not get bigger. I think they need to fix that. Reward tank Garen players in their own unique way by having a bigger spin radius if their champion model is increased. I feel like thematically this makes sense. There's several champions that have been altered to have bigger, larger hitboxes. I feel like this would be a really great way to modernize tankier Garen builds, and I feel like it rewards Garens for choosing more wisely over getting Elixir of Fortitude compared to Elixir of Wrath, which is a pretty common thing. I feel like it just makes sense, and it kind of doesn't make sense that it doesn't do this already. So I feel like this would be a good way to modernize certain builds and then certain Elixir choices like game. It's something that's super small that won't apply to every game, but I feel like it should be a quality of life thing. So that's about everything that I have. I'm not proposing that he gets more damage. I'm not proposing he gets more resistances or health per level. I feel like this is a great start. I want to keep this concise and very brief to be able to help Garens in the right direction, because I feel like if I was to propose something like this to Riot, they're more bound to listen. If I just am like that other Garen main who's like, "Wah, Garen's doing so bad in high elo, buff his damage, buff his durability, buff his ultimate cooldown, give it a reset." You know how many designers are going to be like, "Yeah, about that." You know, I feel like there's purpose around my changes. It's very easy when it comes to asking for buffs on your champion to be like, you know what, just buff my champion's damage. What's the worst that can happen? Buff his cooldowns, right? Buff his durability, you know? Everyone under the sun asks that. But when you have purpose, deliberate purpose around the changes that you're trying to suggest, and you think about what's the implications of those changes, it's a stronger argument for me to pitch towards Riot, which is exactly what I'm doing with this video, because I'm going to link this video in the LPP server, and hopefully a designer, you know, sits down for a few seconds and just checks it out. Like, I advocate for Garens, and I do it in a smart way, because I feel like what I'm suggesting is a smart change. You know, I have a lot of people who bring Garen changes towards me all the time. Like, oh, Garen's Q should reset. Oh, Garen's Q should make him CC immune. I'm like, yeah, I mean, that would be cool, but it'd also be kind of busted. You know, I maybe some people think that the changes I'm suggesting are busted. I don't know, but you guys let me know down in the comments what you guys think. Again, it's small, but I do think Garen needs a little something right now to help him out in high-low. And these nerfs to his runes have really, really affected him. So that's about it. Thanks so much for listening to my rant today, guys. Let me know in the comments what you personally would like to see when it comes to Garen potentially getting buffed. If he ever gets buffed, who knows? Maybe he's just going to sit in the dumpster in high-low forever. I don't know. It's hard to tell. But it is interesting to think about if Garen was to ever get buffed in the future, what that would look like. So thanks so much for watching today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this type of discussion about Garen potentially getting buffed. Write down in the comments what you guys want to see, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks so much for watching and supporting the channel, and also check the various links in my description for my Twitter, Twitch stream, and Patreon, which was recently released, which can give you access to the exclusive Garen matchup spreadsheet and item guide. All right, see you guys later. Demastia, baby.